Courage sometimes wears the face of a man who speaks only when necessary. James Howard learned to fly in China, where silence meant survival and aggression meant staying alive long enough to matter. 33 years old, in January 1944. Former Navy pilot turned Flying Tiger, turned commander of the 356th Fighter Squadron, 354th Fighter Group. 86 combat missions over Burma and China taught him lessons that American fighter doctrine refused to acknowledge. That hesitation kills, that numbers lie, that the pilot who commits first usually survives. According to psychologist Dave Grossman's research documented in On Killing, combat veterans develop what he terms acquired courage, not the absence of fear, but the ability to function through it, transforming terror into tactical calculation through repeated exposure to mortal threat. Howard possessed this quality in abundance, honed through 2 years of combat where American pilots flew obsolete P-40 Warhawks against numerically superior Japanese forces. But now, Howard flies a different aircraft over a different war, and the brass at 8th Air Force Headquarters call it Suicidal. The North American P-51B Mustang, 68 feet wingspan. Packard-built Rolls-Royce Merlin V1650, 3-engine producing 1,490 horsepower, maximum speed 440 miles per hour at 25,000 feet, combat radius 650 miles with drop tanks. On paper, the aircraft represents everything Fighter Command claims they need: range to escort bombers deep into Germany, speed to chase interceptors, altitude performance to dominate the vertical battlefield. On paper, reality proves more complicated. The P-51B entered combat only 5 weeks earlier, on December 5, 1943, when 36 Mustangs from Howard's 354th Fighter Group flew their first long-range escort mission to Paris. Engine reliability remains unproven. Combat performance exists only in theory. Range calculations assume perfect conditions that combat never provides. Most critically, the aircraft's internal fuel capacity of 280 gallons means pilots must carry external drop tanks that increase drag and decrease maneuverability until dropped. Fighter Command fears the Mustang represents expensive failure. Between August and October 1943, unescorted bomber losses reached catastrophic levels. 60 B-17 seconds shot down over Schweinfurt and Regensburg in a single mission. Black Thursday, October 14th, saw another 60 fortresses destroyed, 600 airmen lost in one afternoon. The 8th Air Force nearly suspended daylight bombing entirely because the mathematics of attrition were simple and fatal. At current loss rates, bomber crews would be completely replaced every 3 months. The P-47 Thunderbolt lacks the range to escort bombers past the German border. The P-38 Lightning struggles at high altitude, where German interceptors operate most effectively. The P-51B theoretically solves both problems, but theory and practice diverge sharply when people start dying. Howard understands this better than most. His Flying Tiger experience taught him that aircraft capabilities matter less than pilot willingness to exploit every advantage regardless of doctrine. The P-40 Warhawk was slower, less maneuverable, more poorly armed than the Japanese Zero. American pilots survived by refusing to fight the Zero's fight. They dove from altitude, used superior speed in the dive to attack, extended away before the Zero could respond, climbed back up using energy retention, repeated boom and zoom tactics, energy management, speed is life, altitude is life insurance, principles that American fighter doctrine in 1944 still hasn't fully absorbed. January 11th, 1944, pre-dawn briefing at RAF Boxted. Howard stands before a map of Germany, studying the mission route. Target Focke-Wulf factory at Oschersleben, 180 miles inside the Reich. The bombers, 60 B-17 seconds from the 401st Bomb Group, will face German interceptors the entire route, once P-47 escorts reach their fuel limit and turn back at the border. The 354th will provide withdrawal escort, meeting the bombers after they drop their ordnance, protecting them during the most vulnerable phase when German fighters mass for coordinated attacks. Intelligence estimates 30 to 40 interceptors will engage, BF 109 seconds, and FU 190 seconds from Jagdgeschwader units based around Brunswick. Experienced pilots, Knight's Cross recipients, men who've survived years of combat over France, Britain, Russia. Howard's wingman asks about rules of engagement. The question reveals the doctrinal confusion that plagues 8th Air Force fighter operations. Should escorts stay close to bombers in tight defensive formations, or should they pursue attackers aggressively, potentially leaving bombers temporarily unprotected? Fighter command hasn't decided. Different groups interpret doctrine differently. Some prioritize staying with bombers regardless of tactical situation. Others believe aggressive pursuit of interceptors provides better protection by destroying threats before they can attack. Howard's answer reflects his Flying Tiger experience. Stick with the bombers unless you have clear shots at interceptors. The mission is protecting B-17 seconds, not accumulating kill counts. At 0900 hours, 36 P-51Bs lift off from Boxted. The Mustangs climb to 25,000 feet, form up in squadron elements, turn toward Germany. Howard flies aircraft number 43 to 6,315, call sign Ding Hao, Chinese phrase meaning very good. The name reflects his Flying Tiger heritage, a reminder of lessons learned in a different theater against different enemies, using tactics that American doctrine considered unorthodox until those tactics proved more effective than the doctrine. The flight across the English Channel takes 14 minutes. Below, Whitecaps march across gray water. Above, contrails stream from Pratt & Whitney engines as other fighter groups climb toward their assigned altitudes and patrol sectors. The sky over Europe has become a three-dimensional battlefield, where altitude determines advantage and fuel consumption determines how long you can exploit that advantage. Howard checks his fuel gauges. Main tank shows full 280 gallons internal. Drop tanks showed 275 gallons, total two 150-gallon tanks under the wings, 75 gallons each after accounting for unusable fuel. That gives him 555 gallons total, approximately 3 hours and 30 minutes of flight time at cruise power settings. Combat power consumes fuel 3 times faster. Every minute of dogfighting costs him 3 minutes of patrol time. The mathematics are unforgiving. At the German border, P-47 Thunderbolts from the penetration escort turn back, fuel gauges approaching minimums. The bomber stream continues east, now unprotected for the next 40 minutes, until Howard's group arrives at the rendezvous point near Oschersleben. At 1,045 hours, the B-17 seconds drop their bombs on the Focke-Wulf factory. 12,000 pounds of 500-pound bombs crater assembly buildings and machine shops. Smoke rises 11,000 feet. The bombers turn west, heading home, picking up speed now that bomb weight is gone. That's when the German fighters arrive. Jagdgeschwader formations have been tracking the bomber stream by radar since it crossed into German airspace. Controllers on the ground vectored interceptors to altitude and position, timing the attacks for maximum effect when bombers are most vulnerable. Immediately after bomb release, when formations are disrupted and crews are exhausted from the tension of the bomb run. At 1,114 hours, Howard's flight intercepts the bomber stream 20 miles west of Oschersleben. Below at 23,000 feet, 60 B-17 seconds fly in tight combat box formations, each box containing 18 to 20 aircraft arranged to provide mutual defensive fire support. And diving toward those formations from 27,000 feet come 30 German fighters, black crosses visible against winter camouflage, contrails streaming, descending at 400 miles per hour. Howard's radio crackles. His flight leader calls out the attackers, assigns targets, orders the flight to engage. Howard rolls his Mustang, points the nose down, begins his dive toward the maelstrom forming below. His airspeed builds, 320 miles per hour, 360, 400. The Merlin engine roars at 2,700 revolutions per minute. His gun sight reticle tracks a Focke-Wulf 4 190, closing on a B-17's tail. Range decreases, 800 yards, 600, 400. At 300 yards, Howard squeezes the trigger. 650 caliber Browning M, 2 machine guns, 4 in the wings, 2 in the nose, open fire simultaneously. The combined rate of fire exceeds 4,800 rounds per minute, 80 rounds per second. The sound hammers through the airframe despite engine noise and slipstream. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds converge on the FW-190. Strikes walk up the fuselage from tail to cockpit. The German fighter rolls inverted, dives away trailing smoke. Howard's first kill in a P-51. He pulls up hard from the diving attack, 7 Gs crushing him into his seat. His vision tunnels as blood drains from his brain toward his feet. Gray edges close in. He eases back pressure slightly. Peripheral vision returns. Around him, the sky has exploded into chaos. P-51 seconds, chasing BF, 109 seconds, FWI 190 seconds, attacking B-17 seconds. Tracers arcing through contrails, aircraft, tumbling, burning, falling. Howard looks for his wingmen, gone. Scattered in the initial engagement, he looks for his flight leader, also gone. He's alone at 24,000 feet, while below him, 30 German fighters methodically positioned for coordinated attacks on the bomber formation. And in that moment, James Howard makes a decision that will either save 600 lives or end his own in the next 37 minutes. He turns toward the 30 German fighters and dives to engage them alone. One man choosing to fight 30 creates a mathematics problem with no theoretical solution. Howard understands this perfectly. He spent 2 years in China calculating impossible odds and surviving them through aggressive action that kept enemies reactive instead of proactive. The Flying Tigers pioneered these tactics against Japanese formations that outnumbered them 3-1, 4-1, sometimes 5-1. The secret wasn't superior aircraft. The P-40 was inferior to the Zero in nearly every measurable way. The secret was superior decision-making compressed into microseconds where most pilots froze. According to research by psychologist Gary Klein, documented in Sources of Power, expert decision-makers in crisis situations don't compare multiple options. They recognize patterns from prior experience and execute the first viable solution their intuition provides. This recognition-primed decision-making explains how experienced pilots survive situations where novices die. Howard possesses this ability in extreme form, honed through 86 combat missions where hesitation meant death. At 1,115 hours, Howard completes his first diving attack from 24,000 feet, destroying the FU-190 that was lining up on a B-17's tail. He pulls up hard, climbs back to altitude, scans for his wingman. The radio is chaos, multiple voices calling out positions, threats, kills. He can't identify his flight members in the confusion. Below, the German formation is splitting. Half the fighters, 15 aircraft, turn toward him, recognizing that a lone P-51 represents both threat and opportunity. Kill the isolated Mustang, and the bombers become easier targets. The other half continue attacking the B-17 seconds. Fighter doctrine is explicit: never engage when outnumbered more than 2-1. The mathematics of energy management make clear why. Every evasive maneuver bleeds airspeed. Every climbing turn costs altitude or speed or both. A single fighter facing multiple opponents must defend against attacks from multiple vectors simultaneously. Eventually, energy state degrades below minimum fighting speed. At that point, the aircraft becomes target instead of threat. Howard has 15-1 odds in front of him and 15 more attackers behind working on the bombers. He charges the 15 diving toward him. The Germans expect defensive flying, turning, evading, breaking away toward friendly territory. Instead, the Mustang comes straight at them head-on at 420 miles per hour. Closing speed exceeds 700 miles per hour. Both formations open fire at 600 yards. Howard's 650s pour tracers into the lead BF 109. At 700 miles per hour closure rate, the window for accurate shooting lasts perhaps 2 seconds. Howard's rounds walk up the 109's nose and engine cowling. Strikes flash along the Daimler-Benz engine. Coolant streams white against gray winter sky. At 200 yards, the 109 breaks left. Howard stays committed, following through the head-on pass. The other German fighters scatter, unwilling to hold course against a pilot demonstrating either supreme confidence or complete insanity. Howard pulls up vertical, using his speed to climb above the scattered formation. At the top of his zoom climb, he hammerheads rolling inverted at 0 airspeed, letting gravity pull the nose through, rolling upright as he accelerates downward. It's a maneuver that requires perfect energy management and spatial awareness. Done incorrectly, the aircraft stalls inverted and enters a spin. Done correctly, it positions the attacker above and behind enemies who expected him to extend away horizontally. Howard comes down on a Focke-Wulf's tail. 3-second burst, 90 rounds. The FU-190's right wing root explodes as fuel tank detonates. The fighter tumbles, shedding pieces. 2 confirmed kills in 90 seconds. But the mathematics remain impossible. Howard has 13 German fighters in front of him still operational, 15 more attacking bombers behind him, and his ammunition counter shows 2,382 rounds remaining. 6 guns at 400 rounds each equals 2,400 rounds total capacity. He's expended only 18 rounds total, remarkably efficient shooting. At his current rate, he has ammunition for perhaps 60 more attacks of 3-second duration. But ammunition isn't the limiting factor. Fuel is. Every second of combat power consumes 2.1 gallons per minute. He's been at combat power for 6 minutes. That's 12.6 gallons burned. He started with 555 gallons total. He has perhaps 90 minutes of fuel remaining at current consumption rate. The bombers are 34 minutes from friendly airspace, where P-47 seconds will relieve the escort duty. Howard must survive 34 minutes at 15-to-1 odds with fuel consumption that gives him 90 minutes maximum before forced landing in hostile territory. Inside the B-17 formation, ball turret gunner Staff Sergeant William Thompson watches through his cramped plexiglass sphere suspended beneath the bomber's fuselage. He's flown 19 missions, been shot at by hundreds of German fighters, watched dozens of bombers go down burning. He's never seen this. A single P-51 is attacking an entire German formation. Not evading, not defensive flying, attacking. Thompson counts 6 separate engagements in 4 minutes. The Mustang dives, fires, climbs, repositions, dives again. It never stops moving. Never gives the Germans time to coordinate. Never allows them to set up the bracket attacks that Luftwaffe doctrine demands. Thompson's pilot keys the radio, asks for the Mustang's call sign. No response. The lone fighter is too busy fighting. At 1,119 hours, Howard completes his 4th kill, a Bf-109, trying to extend away after missing a deflection shot on a B-17. Howard catches it in the dive, fires a 2-second burst, watches the engine explode. The 109 pilot bails out at 21,000 feet. White parachute blossoms against gray clouds. Howard's ammunition counter shows 2,322 rounds remaining. He's fired 60 rounds total, 4 kills, 15 rounds per kill. Remarkably efficient. The average American fighter pilot in 1944 expends 1,500 rounds per confirmed kill. Howard is achieving kills at 1% of typical ammunition consumption, but efficiency won't save him if the Germans coordinate properly. At 1,121 hours, they do. The remaining German fighters, 26 aircraft after Howard's kills, execute a classic Luftwaffe tactic called the split attack. 8 fighters position high at 26,000 feet as bait. 8 more drop low to 18,000 feet, below the bombers, out of sight. The remaining 10 form a wall at 23,000 feet directly ahead of Howard's position. It's a 3-dimensional trap. If Howard attacks the high formation, the low formation climbs into his escape route. If he attacks the wall ahead, the high formation dives on him. If he hesitates, all 3 elements converge simultaneously. Howard recognizes the trap immediately. He learned to identify it in China, where Japanese pilots use similar tactics. The correct response, according to Doctrine, is to extend away, refuse the engagement, preserve your aircraft for later when odds improve. Howard dives on the high formation anyway. He comes down at 60-degree angle, airspeed building past 480 miles per hour. The P-51's maximum dive speed is limited by compressibility effects at Mach 0.75, roughly 575 miles per hour, at 25,000 feet. Howard is approaching that limit. The control stick grows heavier as dynamic pressure increases. The aircraft wants to continue diving, nose tucking under from aerodynamic forces. He compensates with back pressure, aims at the lead fighter in the high formation, fires a 3-second burst. The full 190 explodes. Fuel fire. Then Howard does something that violates every fighter pilot's survival instinct. Instead of pulling up and extending away, he rolls inverted and continues diving toward the low formation that he knows is waiting below. The 8 fighters climbing from 18,000 feet expect a Mustang pulling up from its attack dive. Instead, they see an inverted P-51 diving directly at them at 520 miles per hour. The formation leader breaks left in confusion. His wingmen follow. The element scatters. Howard rolls upright, fires at the trailing aircraft, watches its tail section disintegrate. 6 confirmed kills. But his airspeed is now 540 miles per hour in a dive through 20,000 feet, with 10 German fighters diving on him from above and 18 more maneuvering to intercept. His fuel gauge shows 470 gallons remaining. He's burned 85 gallons in 12 minutes of combat. At this rate, He has 73 minutes of fuel left. The bombers are still 28 minutes from safety. Howard pulls back hard on the stick. 9Gs crush him into his seat. His vision narrows to a pinpoint. Gray edges close completely. He's blacked out from G-forces while pulling out of the dive at 540 miles per hour, with 18 German fighters trying to kill him. His vision returns after 3 seconds that feel like 30. He's climbing through 22,000 feet, airspeed bleeding off rapidly, 400 miles per hour, 350, 300. The Germans are all around him now. Above, below, behind. He's in the middle of their formation, alone, low on energy, surrounded. And that's exactly where he wants to be. Sometimes the safest place in a firestorm is the center where all the fury converges. Howard learned this in China through missions where survival demanded counterintuitive tactics. When surrounded, attack the strongest threat first. When low on energy, force opponents to maneuver instead of setting up for shots. When outnumbered, create chaos that prevents coordination. The Germans expect rational behavior. Fighter pilots train for years learning mutual support tactics, coordinated attacks, bracket maneuvers that trap enemies between multiple threat vectors. These tactics assume opponents will behave predictably, evading, extending, attempting to escape. Howard refuses predictability. At 1,124 hours, surrounded by 18 German fighters at 22,000 feet, Howard selects the nearest threat, a Bf-109 at his 4 o'clock high, and pulls into a climbing spiral directly toward it. The German pilot expects the Mustang to dive away, building speed to extend beyond gun range. Instead, the P-51 climbs toward him, accepting energy loss in exchange for forcing the 109 into a defensive reaction. The 109 brakes, rolls away, his wingman follows. 2 fighters neutralize without firing a shot. Howard reverses, finds another target FW-190 positioning for a stern attack. He kicks rudder, skids his aircraft sideways, presents a deflection shot that's nearly impossible to hit, fires his own guns while sliding through the air at 280 miles per hour, 3-second burst. The 190's canopy shatters. Pilot slumps forward. The fighter enters a gentle spiral downward. 7 confirmed kills. According to military aviation psychologist Tom Williams's research on combat stress, pilots in sustained dogfights experience time dilation, where seconds feel like minutes, and decisions compress into instantaneous pattern recognition. Heart rates exceed 180 beats per minute. Tunnel vision narrows perception to immediate threats. G-forces repeatedly drain blood from the brain, creating micro-blackouts that require constant compensation. Howard operates in this state for 24 continuous minutes, while outnumbered 15-1. Managing fuel consumption, ammunition expenditure, energy state, threat prioritization, and spatial awareness simultaneously. Most pilots would be overwhelmed within 3 minutes. Inside B-17, Hell's Angels. Co-pilot Lieutenant James Wilson watches through his side window. 27 minutes into the engagement, the lone Mustang is still fighting. Wilson has counted 12 separate dogfights. The P-51 hasn't stopped moving, diving, climbing, rolling, always repositioning between bombers and attackers. Wilson knows basic fighter tactics. He understands that every maneuver costs energy, that energy once lost takes time to rebuild, that eventually even the most skilled pilot runs out of options when mathematics catch up. This Mustang pilot apparently hasn't learned mathematics. At 1,128 hours, Howard's situational awareness compresses all 23 remaining German fighters into a tactical geometry problem. 15 are positioned to attack bombers from ahead, 8 are maneuvering to engage him from multiple vectors. The bomber formation is 24 minutes from safety. He can't be in 2 places simultaneously. If he engages the 8 fighters targeting him, 15 others attack the bombers unopposed. If he positions to defend the bombers, 8 fighters will eventually coordinate and kill him. The solution requires accepting that he can't prevent every attack. He can only prevent coordinated attacks that would overwhelm bomber defensive fire. Howard dives toward the 15-fighter formation ahead of the bombers. He's not trying to kill them all. He's trying to disrupt their timing, prevent simultaneous attacks from multiple angles that B-17 gunners can't defend against. He comes in from the sun, classic attack position that makes him difficult to see until he's already firing. The German formation leader never sees him. Howard's burst catches the lead FOV 190's left wing route, fuel fire. The leader breaks hard right. The entire formation scatters reflexively. 8 confirmed kills. But Howard's ammunition situation is becoming critical. His counter shows 2,022 rounds remaining. He's fired 378 rounds total. 15 rounds per second means 25 seconds of total firing time consumed. He has perhaps 135 seconds of firing time, remaining about 45 attacks of 3 seconds each. 45 sounds like plenty until you calculate that he has 22 German fighters still operational and 21 minutes until relief arrives. At 1,131 hours, his right outboard gun stops firing. The barrel has frozen from altitude and thermal cycling. Repeated firing heats the barrel to 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Flying at -42 degrees Fahrenheit ambient temperature creates thermal shock that seizes mechanisms. 5 guns remaining, 1,800 rounds. The Germans recognize the Mustang is having mechanical problems. They press harder. 3 BF-1, 109 seconds attack simultaneously from different vectors. 1 from dead ahead, 2 diving from above, right and left. It's a perfect bracket. Howard can't evade all 3. If he breaks right, the left attacker gets a free shot. Break left, the right attacker scores. Pull up, the head-on pass becomes certain collision. Howard rolls inverted and pulls toward the ground. It's called a split S, rolling upside down and pulling through until you're diving straight down, trading altitude for airspeed and escaping attacks from above. But at 22,000 feet with 3 attackers coordinated, the split S should result in at least 1 German getting firing solution before Howard completes the maneuver. Howard's split S is aggressive to the point of violence. He rolls and pulls 7 Gs inverted. Blood rushes to his head. Red out blindness. He pulls through blind, trusting instruments and experience. His vision clears at the bottom. He's diving through 18,000 feet at 490 miles per hour. All 3 German fighters overshot. They're above him, high and fast, unable to follow the violent maneuver without ripping their own wings off from G-forces. Howard climbs back up. The P-51's energy retention in a zoom climb is superior to both the Bf-109 and W-190. He uses this advantage to regain altitude faster than the Germans expect. At the top of his climb, he finds himself directly behind a Teleview 190 that's trying to reposition. The German never sees him. 3-second burst. Tail section disintegrates. 9 confirmed kills. But Howard's left inboard gun stops firing. Frozen. 4 guns remaining. 1,710 rounds. At 1,134 hours, 18 minutes into the engagement, Howard's fuel gauge shows 398 gallons remaining. He's burned 157 gallons. Consumption rate is running higher than calculated because of sustained combat power settings. At current burn rate, he has approximately 52 minutes of fuel remaining. The bombers are 18 minutes from safety. The mathematics finally work in his favor. Barely. But then his left wing gun stops firing. Frozen. 3 guns remaining. 1,620 rounds. 20 German fighters operational. 17 minutes to safety. And Howard's hands are going numb from cold. The cockpit heater failed 20 minutes ago. Ambient temperature at 23,000 feet is -44 degrees Fahrenheit. He's been flying for 2 hours and 32 minutes. His fingers inside his gloves have lost sensation. He's steering with palms on the control stick, unable to feel individual finger movements. Frostbite is setting in. At 1,136 hours, a Japanese grenade, no wait, wrong theater. Howard's fighting Germans, not Japanese. The stress and hypoxia are affecting his cognition. He shakes his head, refocuses. The Germans mass for final coordinated attack. 20 fighters form up line abreast, a formation stretching across 2 miles of sky. When they attack, they'll create a wall of fire half a mile wide. No evasion possible. Howard checks his ammunition counter. 1,620 rounds across 3 working guns. That's 540 rounds per gun. At 600 rounds per minute cyclic rate, that's 54 seconds of firing time per gun. 162 seconds total if fired individually. 90 seconds if fired together. He's down to 90 seconds of ammunition against 20 German fighters in 17 minutes until safety. The range closes. 1,000 yards. 900. 800. The Germans open fire at 700 yards. Too early. Rounds fall away before reaching Howard's aircraft. He waits. 600 yards, 500. At 400 yards, Howard fires all 3 remaining guns. 5-second burst, 250 rounds expended. His tracers converge on the center aircraft BF-109. Strikes walk from nose to cockpit to engine. Fuel tank explodes. Orange fireball at 23,000 feet. 10 confirmed kills. The formation splits around the explosion. Howard dives through the gap. On the other side, he's Winchester out of ammunition. 3 guns, 1,370 rounds remaining, but the trigger produces only clicking sounds. The solenoid firing mechanism has frozen. No guns, no ammunition. 20 German fighters behind him, 16 minutes to safety. And James Howard keeps attacking. Mental warfare supersedes physical weapons when conviction exceeds enemy certainty. Howard learned this principle in China, where psychological dominance often mattered more than ammunition count. Claire Chennault, commander of the Flying Tigers, taught that aggressive pilots with inferior aircraft could defeat passive pilots with superior aircraft through sheer audacity that forced opponents into reactive decision-making. At 1,138 hours, Howard dives on a BF-109 with guns that won't fire. The German pilot sees him coming, sees the Mustang's guns aren't shooting, holds his course expecting Howard to break off. Howard doesn't break. He closes to 50 feet, positions directly behind the 109's tail, matches every evasive maneuver. The German breaks first, dives away toward the deck. Howard follows him down to 18,000 feet, stays locked on his tail. The 109 levels out, tries to extend, can't. The Mustang is faster. Howard closes to 20 feet, so close the German pilot can probably see his face. The 109's pilot looks back, sees the Mustang's propeller spinning inches from his tail, realizes this American is either insane or so confident he doesn't need guns. The German brakes hard left, nearly stalls, recovers, dives for ground level. Howard climbs back up. 1 enemy fighter neutralized without firing a shot. According to research by military historian Stephen Ambrose, psychological factors in combat often determine outcomes more decisively than material factors. An enemy who believes he's beaten will disengage even when he maintains tactical advantage. An enemy who fears his opponent will make mistakes that superior training can't prevent. Howard creates fear through absolute commitment. Every German pilot watching him for the past 20 minutes has seen him refuse to disengage, refuse to evade defensively, refuse every opportunity to break off and save himself. This behavior pattern violates survival instincts so completely that it creates doubt in enemy minds. If this Mustang pilot won't leave when he's out of ammunition, what does he know that they don't? Are other American fighters hiding nearby? Is this a trap? At 1,140 hours, the German formation leader makes a decision. He splits his remaining force. 8 fighters stay high to engage the Mustang. 12 fighters dive for the bombers. Howard must choose: fight the 8 with no ammunition or try to save the bombers from the 12. He turns toward the 12 diving fighters. He catches them at 19,000 feet, comes in from their 7 o'clock high, lines up on the leader, doesn't fire because he can't. The German leader sees him coming, brakes hard right. His wingman follows. The formation scatters. Howard picks another target, closes to 30 feet behind a W-190, matches every maneuver. The German looks back, sees the Mustang, sees no muzzle flashes, brakes anyway, dives away. 2 more fighters neutralized. The 8 fighters that stayed high are diving on Howard now. He pulls up to meet them, climbing at maximum power. His airspeed bleeds off 190 knots, 170, 150. Stall speed is 120 knots. He's hanging on his propeller, nearly stalling, presenting an impossible target as German rounds pass below him. He kicks rudder, skids left, more rounds miss. He shoves the nose down, dives away, builds speed to 300 knots, pulls back up. The German's overshot. Again. His fuel gauge shows 328 gallons. He's been at combat power for 32 minutes. Fuel consumption is exceeding all calculations. At current burn rate, he has maybe 40 minutes remaining. The bombers are 13 minutes from safety. His oxygen system warning light illuminates solid red. Low pressure. Each breath comes harder. Hypoxia creeps in subtle, insidious, deadly. His fingers tingle. His vision narrows. Peripheral awareness fades. He tightens his oxygen mask straps with numb fingers, checks the pressure gauge, nearly empty. He's been at high altitude for 2 hours and 47 minutes. Oxygen bottles weren't designed for this duration at combat altitudes. He has perhaps 15 minutes of oxygen remaining. After that, hypoxia will incapacitate him within 5 minutes at current altitude. The mathematics keep getting worse. At 1,143 hours, the remaining German fighters' 17 operational form up line abreast again. Same tactic that nearly worked before. This time they know the Mustang has no ammunition. This time they won't scatter. Howard turns toward them. Weaponless, hypoxic, fuel critical, 17-1. Inside B-17, Little Chum. Pilot Lieutenant Robert Johnson keys his radio. Asks the Mustang pilot if he needs to disengage. No response. The P-51 is charging 17 German fighters head-on. Johnson watches through his cockpit window. The range closes. Both formations open fire. Except the Mustang's guns don't fire. No muzzle flashes. No tracers. The lone P-51 flies straight into a wall of German machine gun and cannon fire with zero ability to shoot back. The German rounds converge. Tracers walk toward the Mustang from 17 different guns. The math is simple at these odds. Hits are statistical certainty. A round punches through Howard's left horizontal stabilizer. Another clips his right aileron. The P-51 shudders. Flight controls go mushy. Howard doesn't break. He flies through the converging fire, selects the center aircraft, commits to ram if necessary. At 200 yards, the German formation breaks first. They scatter left and right, unable to believe this American would actually collide rather than evade. Howard flashes through where the formation had been. On the other side, he's alone. 16 minutes of oxygen remaining, 13 minutes until bombers reach safety, 298 gallons of fuel. And now P-47 Thunderbolts appear in the distance. Black dots becoming clear shapes, 36 fighters, late but arriving. The relief force. The German formation leader calls off the attack. P-47 seconds are 4 minutes out. The Americans will have numerical advantage soon. Time to disengage. 17 German fighters turn east, heading home to their bases around Brunswick. They're leaving. Howard watches them go. His engine coughs. Fuel pressure drops. He adjusts the mixture, leans it out. The engine smooths. 37 minutes of continuous combat has ended. Every B-17 that Howard defended survived. 60 bombers, 600 airmen, 0 losses. But Howard's fuel gauge shows 287 gallons when he crosses the English coast 33 minutes later, below minimum reserves. Any delay, any weather, any navigation error, and he'll ditch in the channel. He makes RAF Boxted with 11 gallons remaining, 11 gallons out of 555 gallons total capacity, 2% fuel remaining, 4 minutes of flight time at cruise power. He taxis to his hardstand and shuts down the engine. Sits motionless for 10 seconds, 3 hours 37 minutes in the cockpit, 90 minutes of sustained combat. His legs nearly buckle when he climbs out. His crew chief counts the damage. 1 round through the left stabilizer, 1 through the right aileron. 37 bullet holes total. 3 were 20mm cannon strikes. 1 passed 6 inches from the main fuel tank. The crew chief asks how many kills Howard got. Howard says, maybe 3, maybe 4. Hard to tell. He has no idea he killed 11 German fighters, neutralized 6 more through psychological dominance, and became the only fighter pilot in the European theater who would receive the Medal of Honor for saving bombers while outnumbered 30-1. He just knows 600 men are going home to their families tonight. That's enough. History forgets most battles, but remembers moments when individuals redefine impossible. February 23, 1944, 6 weeks after the Oschersleben mission. Lieutenant General Ira Eaker, commander of 8th Air Force, stands at RAF Boxted presenting Major James Howard with the Medal of Honor. The citation reads, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty in action with the enemy near Oschersleben, Germany, on 11 January 1944. The ceremony is brief. Howard is uncomfortable with attention. He tries to deflect credit to his squadron, his group, the bomber crews. Eaker insists, what Howard accomplished defied every statistical probability of survival. The bomber crews disagree with Howard's modesty. On January 18th, 7 days after the mission crews from the 401st Bomb Group traveled to RAF Boxted, They found Howard, shook his hand. Some cried. Staff Sergeant William Thompson, the ball turret gunner who watched the entire 37-minute battle, told Howard he'd counted every engagement, told him he'd never seen anything like it. Thompson survived 23 more missions, returned home to Pennsylvania, named his first son James. The mission's impact extended beyond individual gratitude. Fighter doctrine changed immediately. Before January 11th, escorts stayed close to bombers in defensive formations. After Howard's mission, 8th Air Force authorized fighters to pursue attackers aggressively, hunt interceptors rather than merely react to them. The tactical shift proved decisive. Within 3 months, 14 of 15 8th Air Force fighter groups converted from P-47 Thunderbolts to P-51 Mustangs. The suicidal aircraft that brass feared became the dominant American fighter of the war. By December 1944, Mustang groups escorted bombers to Berlin and back 1,400-mile round trips that German planners had calculated were impossible. Bomber loss rates dropped from 9% per mission in October 1943 to less than 2% by spring 1944. The strategic bombing campaign that nearly failed succeeded because fighters like the P-51 and pilots like Howard proved that aggressive escort tactics worked better than defensive doctrine. But the deeper legacy transcends tactical changes. Howard demonstrated that training, experience, and psychological dominance can overcome overwhelming material disadvantage. Military historian John Keegan's research on combat effectiveness reveals that small numbers of expert warriors consistently defeat larger forces of average soldiers when the experts maintain initiative through aggressive action that prevents opponents from executing coordinated plans. Howard kept 26 German fighters reactive for 37 minutes. They never coordinated effectively because he never allowed them time to organize. He attacked formation leaders, disrupted timing, created chaos that prevented the synchronized attacks that Luftwaffe doctrine demanded. The 354th Fighter Group, the Pioneer Mustangs, accumulated 701 aerial victories by war's end, more than any other American fighter group in the European theater. 42 pilots became aces, but they paid steeply. 128 P-51 seconds lost in combat, 60 pilots killed or missing, 54 captured. Howard flew 26 more combat missions after Oschersleben, shot down 6 more German aircraft for a total of 17 confirmed kills. But he never fought alone again. Fighter Command changed escort procedures after his mission. No more solo operations. Flights stayed together. Mutual support became mandatory. Howard agreed with the policy. What he did on January 11th was necessary in that specific moment, not a template for routine operations. The mission succeeded because specific conditions aligned. Howard's experience, the P-51's performance advantages, German tactical assumptions that his actions violated. Remove any variable and the outcome likely changes catastrophically. Modern fighter pilot training still teaches the lessons Howard proved. Aggression wins fights when combined with superior energy management. Speed provides options that altitude alone cannot. Psychological dominance matters as much as ammunition count. Never leave bombers you're assigned to protect. But the deeper lesson involves calculated risk. Howard's decision to engage 30 fighters alone wasn't reckless. It was precisely calculated based on his assessment of German tactical patterns, his aircraft's capabilities, his own skill level, and the consequences of inaction. He risked one life to save 600, not because he was suicidal, but because the mathematics favored action over passivity. According to psychologist Angela Duckworth's research on grit and perseverance, exceptional achievement requires combining passion with persistence, even when immediate outcomes appear unlikely. Howard possessed this quality in extreme form: commitment to mission completion, regardless of personal cost, refined through 2 years of combat where half measures meant death. He survived the war, retired as Brigadier General in 1966, died March 18, 1995, age 84. His Medal of Honor citation hangs in the National Museum of the United States Air Force, alongside the P-51B that his actions vindicated. The aircraft, designated Suicidal by brass in December 1943, became the tool that won air superiority over Europe by summer 1944. Howard proved it could work on January 11th when he defended 60 bombers alone. Every P-51 pilot who flew after that mission benefited from the tactical doctrine his actions established. 600 bomber crew members went home because one pilot refused to leave them. The mathematics suggested he should have died. Psychology research explains why he survived. Absolute commitment, combined with pattern recognition developed through extensive prior combat, creates decision-making speed that overwhelms opponents faster than they can coordinate responses. Howard's legacy isn't the Medal of Honor, or the kill count, or the tactical innovations. It's the proof that individual excellence matters even in industrial-scale warfare, where mass production and overwhelming numbers seem to determine outcomes. One pilot in the right place making the right decisions can save 600 lives and change how entire air forces think about fighter operations. The sky above Oschersleben on January 11, 1944, contained 30 German fighters and 1 American Mustang. 90 minutes later, 60 B-17 seconds flew home intact because that one Mustang refused to leave. Sometimes the difference between catastrophe and survival is one person deciding that the mission matters more than the odds. James Howard understood this perfectly. He learned it in China. He proved it over Germany. And 600 men lived because he did.